Business wise, I'm a sales girly. I've been in sales for many years now, and I feel like at this point it's a big part of my personality. Even my friends and people outside work are like, you're never not selling something. I think it was just like a lot of hard work and never giving up and like learning and evolving and like absorbing everything from everyone else. I thought it was good at what we were doing. The resilience and relentless were some of the things that I learned that you need to have in sales.
What makes this story interesting isn't just the role she is in, but it's the path she took to get there. So her career in sales wasn't linear, it came with a lot of mistakes, learnings, and moments of self-doubt. Welcome to a new episode of Leaders of Growth. I'm Milan, Savov, CEO of SmartClick, where we help B2B SaaS companies get to the top of AI searches and Google and turn visibility into high-quality organic leads and pipeline. Today's episode will be a bit different because we have the first woman on the podcast, and I'm joined by Mina Draskovic, who is part of the team at Instantly, one of the most widely used tools for outbound and cold emails in SaaS today.
I think in sales especially, confidence isn't about being the biggest personality in the room. It's about being grounded and prepared and like trusting your own ability to figure things out. The goal is to have different people with different sensibilities within your sales team, because maybe someone who's buying from me wouldn't buy from the corporate guy, and someone who's buying for a corporate guy wouldn't buy from me because I'm not that, corporate. So I guess it depends.
Welcome to a new episode of Leaders of Growth. I'm Milan Savov, CEO of SmartClick, where we help B2B SaaS companies get to the top of AI searches and Google and turn visibility into high-quality organic leads and pipeline. Today's episode will be a bit different because we have the first woman on the podcast, and I'm joined by Mina Draskovic, who is part of the team at Instantly, one of the most widely used tools for outbound and cold emails in SaaS today. What makes this story interesting isn't just the role she is in, but it's the path she took to get there. So her career in sales wasn't linear. It came with a lot of mistakes, learnings, and moments of self-doubt. And I think that's exactly why it would be different and what like all of us want to hear. So Mina, welcome to the podcast. And how are you today?
Hi, Milan. Thank you very much for that nice intro. I feel like now I'm, pressure's on being the first girl on your podcast. So, but that's nice. You should have more girls.
Yeah, that's cool.
I
So
feel privileged.
can you just introduce to the people who don't know you yet? How do you usually introduce yourself today?
Well, like business wise, I'm a sales girly. I've been in sales for many years now, and I feel like at this point it's a big part of my personality. Even my friends and people outside work are like, you're never not selling something. And I don't even think about it. It's not like I'm trying to convince you to buy something or whatever. I'm just very passionate about when I know something's good and that you need it and that you should try it. I feel like it's just it comes out of me naturally. So I guess it's who I am at this point.
Yeah, that's really cool. So before Instantly and sales, is there like anything which you were trying to become professionally before jumping into this part?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started in a completely different universe. I started in fashion and public relations. I studied languages actually, and then marketing and public relations as well. And somehow ended up living this type of like very Devil Wears Prada at Hasn't life, I'd say.
Yeah.
I worked for fashion magazines and styling, and later then PR and diplomacy as well, which is kind of, I guess, even weirder. But my days were always like full of, deadlines and interviews and events and press releases, like brand campaigns, just making sure that every detail was always perfect and doing all of it while like looking composed and put together, if that makes sense, because a lot of it was about that. So I guess on paper, fashion and diplomacy seem miles away from SaaS sales, but I think they they actually shaped me in many ways, because I think those worlds teach discipline and like pressure tolerance and storytelling and a lot of attention to detail and how to communicate with pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it even though it looks like two completely different lives I lived, or even more than two, I think it makes perfect sense how I ended up right here.
And you mentioned that you were in fashion and marketing. And how actually you end up in sales? What was the moment which you said, okay, this is something which I want to continue with?
I think it was just I was doing a job that I wasn't happy with back in the day. There was I had a lot of very bad also work experiences, not in sales, but like in general,
Mm,
which now like looking back at it, is I think it was kind of good in a way because I think it builds character.
yeah.
So one of those jobs that I was doing that I wasn't happy with, I thought it was the time for a change, and I never even like looked for any sales
Mm,
role. I just like went to like a job board. I just saw some postings, and then I was looking at this one job that wasn't even cold sales. It was just like something, and then the skill set was actually like what I had. So, you know, I went like good with languages, like perfect English, communication, things like that. And I was just like tick, 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 like I
mm,
check all the boxes, and I just applied, and it ended up being like a pre-sales role. Which I realized when I started doing it. And then after, I think 1 month, like 2 months in, I was the best. I was the top performer in that team in pre-sales. So they moved me to inside sales, and that's kind of
mm,
like where I started with fully like selling and closing. And then obviously I just bounced with, you know, from B2C to B2B,
mm.
which is where I am now. But from that point onwards, I never ever switched back from sales. So
That's pretty nice. So if I understand you well, you started as a pre-sales person because you know the English very well, and after
yeah,
that you
it was kind
became the
of
top
like
performer.
more, yeah, but it was more like B2C, so more than like SDR, like more like
Mm, yeah,
booking
yeah,
meetings for other people,
yeah.
not closing specifically. But yeah, that's how it started.
That's cool. So, is there like any mistake which you made early that days, which like shaped you or influences how you actually work today and become that top performer?
Ah, foo, foo, foo. I don't know. I think maybe mistakes. I mean, there's definitely I've made a lot of them for sure. I can't remember like a specific example,
Or if there is not a
but
mistake, like what was the main thing which shaped you to become the top performer with that team
I
which you
think,
were
yeah,
before?
I think it was just like a lot of hard work and never giving up and like learning and evolving
Yeah.
and like absorbing everything from everyone else. I thought it was good at what we were doing. So it was kind of like a compound skill set of a lot of
Mm.
stuff. And I think in sales, you can't expect like 9 to 5 type of work. So I think
Yeah.
the resilience and relentless was some of the things that I learned that you need to have in sales. However, I did already have those kind of like skills from the other jobs I did before, even though
Mm.
they were not sales. So it kind of came in handy to, you know, do it all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So usually when you're in sales, it requires like a lot of confidence, but the confidence comes from competence, from experience, which we usually don't have in the very beginning. So how did you build yours when you come from the top performer pre-sales to after that in sales?
I think I like to think that I always had like a healthy dose, you know, of self-confidence. Not like
Mm,
too much, but not too little. It was kind of like you know, the kind of confidence that's steady but not loud. I think
mm,
in sales especially, confidence isn't about being the biggest personality in the room. It's about being grounded and prepared and like trusting your own ability to figure things out. And for me, I guess that confidence grew in layers. So it came from experience, as you said, it came from results, from environments where leaders actually acknowledged me that, you know, I did well, from seeing each, and also from seeing each chapter of my career become a step forward from the last one. I think that also builds a belief and gives you that type of confidence.
mm,
But another thing that's not, I guess, money oriented at all for me, even though I think that what boosted my confidence the most wasn't just numbers, even though I do agree that numbers are absolutely matter in our world in sales.
Yeah.
But I think it was more about feedback about who I was at work while I'm doing, this job, sales. The way I, handle difficult conversations, difficult clients, like patience, the creativity, the kindness, the composure. It's like those moments meant more to me than any commission slip, because I think confidence doesn't just come from performance. It comes from like character, and from knowing the way you show up actually matters.
Yeah, yeah. And when you mentioned like feedback, do you had like any person who was following your process, following how you developed as a salesperson, and actually jumped in when they feel that you can do better, but maybe it's like your blind spot?
Well, I always had
Or you
managers
did
and like
self-reflection
superiors.
to actually get.
Yeah, I mean, I think we more did like group like call reviews and things like
Mm,
that, where we could give feedback to each other or someone can
mm,
give feedback to us. But I think sales is a very individual thing, It's not, it is a team effort, but at the end of the day, every single one of us is doing their own calls and their own stuff, and we're all different. We all have different sensibility, the
mm,
different way of communication. For example, I'm more like emotional seller, I think that's what they call it. Even though, and I'm good at it, but I also have colleagues that are like very corporative type of like
mm,
salespeople, like straight to business, and they're also great at it. And I think the goal is to have like different people with different sensibilities within
yeah.
your sales team, because maybe someone who's buying from me wouldn't buy from the corporate guy, and someone
Mm,
who's buying for a corporate guy wouldn't buy from me because I'm not that,
yeah.
corporate. So I guess it depends. But I always got advice when I always like to ask as well. So I can't give you like one advice that I got that was like super like changed my,
Mm,
the trajectory or whatever. And I also think that sometimes you need to go through the things and like knock your head to the wall a few times to actually be like, something needs to change here, like to actually see your own mistakes. So I think that also counts. You can't really become excellent without those things happening to you.
yeah, yeah. From my experience, when I review a sales call, which I did, I usually can find few things which I can tweak in the next call. And after
Yeah,
that, just doing that on a constantly basis, it improves you a lot on a long term. So maybe you will not see the
correct. I
results
agree.
soon, but then after 3, 5, 10 new calls, it will definitely shape you to be better. And I must say here that usually some myth is that salespeople should speak a lot, but that it's actually,
Listening.
yeah,
Mhm.
how much you actually listen actively, you're better at understanding the person and help them actually solve their main pain. That's cool. So usually sales and SaaS are like very male dominated. How do you handle that, or how do you first feel that when you get into the sales?
Well, yeah, I think you feel that in the moment, like you walk into most SaaS environments or industry events, there are simply more men,
Mm,
leadership rooms, mostly men, panels, mostly men, sales floors, heavily male dominated. But it's not always hostile, it's just visibly uneven. That's what I would say. And when you're a woman in that type of environment, you're aware of it, not in a like fearful way, but more in a way like, okay, so I'm gonna have to prove myself a little bit louder type of
mm,
way. So I guess that right now, for example, I'm the only girl on our sales team. I'm an all boys team and I'm loving it. And it's not for like any specific reason. It's just that, my company, we're like pretty big, and the type of salespeople they're looking for and needs to check some of very like important boxes. They're hard to find. So I feel like probably right now it's harder to find all of that in a girl, which is
yeah.
why we don't have many. But across our entire company, we have many, many girls. It's not
Yeah.
like any kind of discrimination. It's just that for whatever reason, I ended up being right now the only girl, but I'm not feeling it right now,
Mm.
honestly. I feel fully supported. I even prefer it this way. I don't know if any other girl joins, it wouldn't be the same anymore. It's like, I'm a premium team member.
Yeah. So there is like no any pressure to behave differently than the rest. It's completely the same no matter the gender.
Yeah.
That's great. And like, is there any moment when you felt like you were underestimated, maybe from the very beginning, or it's like from all the time, like you're explaining?
Um, yes, but not, I guess, in the dramatic way people would imagine. For me, it kind of showed up in subtle choices. For example, very early on, I remember I decided to show up as me, as this performance version of what a woman in sales should look
Mhm.
like on calls, on demos, whatever. So I kind of like always do the demo very barefaced, zero makeup, like hoodie on, or like just a plain t-shirt, just real and focused on competence, which is what
Yeah.
matters most. Not because anyone asked me to kind of like tone myself down ever, that never happened to me, but because I never wanted the narrative to be she's closing because she's
Mm.
pretty, or she has it easier because she's a girl. I just thought I didn't want anyone ever to have that option of saying that,
Yeah.
because it was never true. So I wanted to be undeniable that results came from skill, from discipline, from consistency, not stereotypes or assumptions. So I kind of like just removed the
Mm.
distraction and let the ability speak. And honestly, it works for me, and I still operate on that way. But it's also kind of like, for me, removes any unnecessary waste of time during the day. Like, when I wake up and I have like 12, 15, whatever number of demos a day, the last thing I want to think about is how I look. Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
am I wearing enough makeup? Or am I like dressed? Or like the way someone is expecting me to be? And honestly, like our clients, at least, they don't care. They're there for help. If you provide them with expertise and what they need, they don't care what you look like.
Yeah, I think these are mostly like your beliefs. If you occupied with all of them, you will be definitely bad in the conversation. But if
Yeah.
you put them aside, then you're relaxed when you enter into the conversations. And do you have like any advice? Maybe you're noticing in some other organization that this is not the case which you are having right now at Instantly, how they should support women in sales roles.
Well, I think that a lot of companies in general, like, I'm excluding completely my company out of this story because that's not the case with us, but in general, I think diversity is hiring statistics. Like, we have women, we have international talent, we have different cultures. That's
Yeah.
great, but inclusion isn't just about presence. It's about experience as well. Like, do women feel respected? Do they have equal earning opportunity? Are they promoted at the same pace?
Mm.
Are they visible in leadership? Are they
Yeah.
invited to actually like into strategic conversations with making decisions and things like that? So I think even though, as mentioned, I'm the only woman on my team, the company as a whole is incredibly diverse, like different cultures,
Yeah.
different backgrounds, women across multiple departments. And one day I'm hearing about a colleague told me the other day he's getting married, so I was listening about Desi weddings in India, and the next day I'm learning about food in Latin America. So I think that's beautiful. I think that's kind of like inclusion lived,
Yeah.
not marketed. But globally in SaaS, I'd say equal pay, equal recognition, equal visibility definitely need work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So if companies are just like supporting them to be mostly on the leadership, on strategic discussions, and again to be equal with the raises, with the improvements in the career, then they will have like good moment with the whole team.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's discuss a bit about Instantly. You probably talk with a lot of users on a daily basis. So, what's like the biggest misconceptions they have about the cold emails?
Uh, well, I think everyone would expect uh, me or anyone to answer that cold email is dead. But I think the biggest misconception is that cold email is not a magic button. Well, the misconception is that it actually is a magic button,
Hmm.
because people think they'll sign up, they click start, and suddenly like money will fall from the sky. Cold email works incredibly well. It's a fact, but it's strategy. It's not like a lottery ticket. It's not like you press and you hope. It's research, it's positioning, it's relevance, it's understanding the human on the other side of the screen. I think the tool amplifies, not instantly, but any tool, whatever you bring into it. So if you put in clarity, if you put in discipline, if you put in like strategy, it performs beautifully. But if you put in chaos, you get chaos out of it. So it is what it is.
It's very similar to our service because for the myth which is SEO is dead, that is very popular. But again, when like non-educated people are coming to a call, they also expect like 1 month strategy, and then organic leads will just book their book the calls with them very very often, like you said, with the cold emails. So I think it's mostly across every marketing or outbound channel the same misconception. Uh, and what are like the most common mistakes you see when someone starts creating the campaigns or become a user at instantly?
I think one of the first one that comes to mind is patience. Like people run one campaign for like 2 days and they don't see miracles, and then they declare everything broken. Cold email is kind of like iterative. You test, you adjust, you refine, you repeat. The people who win actually, treat it as a craft, not like a slot machine. So you can always tell who's in there to just like get money out of it, and who really has appreciation of the craft and who's willing to put in the work in testing and optimizing and seeing the results multiply. Obviously, if you're a founder and like you don't have time to deal with all these things, you can just hire people to do it for you. And instantly, for example, apart from like tool services that you just purchase a subscription and use the tool features, we also offered those. Like, we even have like a fully managed service. We have the account management program. So you basically get experts from instantly helping you with this, or even doing it all for you if you don't have time, or because outbound is tricky and it's changing very like rapidly. So there's always new things you need to learn. It's not the same as it was like 5 years ago or even a year ago. So what you have to do is adapt. So if you don't have time to dive into like outbound deep and like learn everything, you can just skip all that time of learning, and just give it to someone who's an expert to do it for you. Participate in the process, take all the knowledge, absorb everything, and then in few months from now, you might be able to do it yourself.
Yeah. Can you share like some example of a good flow, how exactly everything should look like, so we have at the end successful campaign which constantly generate pipeline?
I mean, there's a lot of things obviously that affect.
What's the first thing that you have to do before even starting? What's like after that? If you can walk us through the
I would
flow.
say don't like over optimize technical tricks like subject line hacks, exact word count. Should I use emoji? Should I not use emoji? Which one? Should I send at like 10:07 or 10:09? I think people over obsess over like micro details and ignore fundamentals. What do they actually ignore? Which I think is very important. Relevance, clarity, targeting, because if your email isn't speaking to the right person about something that genuinely matters to them, there's no clever subject line in the world that can save you. So there's a lot of things to be aware of, like the infrastructure, to have enough domains and mailboxes to send the volume you're sending, warm them up, get good quality leads. Obviously, tailor your offering, the copy towards the person you're sending it to. Just don't overcomplicate it. I think when you kind of like have a good product market fit, good offering, and you nail all these technical aspects of it to actually land an inbox, you're good. The results will come for sure.
So you're saying that you shouldn't overcomplicate at the very beginning with the headline and the text. Just have the clarity before with your ICP targeting, everything. Then set up enough email boxes, so you can actually set up the infrastructure. After that, start rolling the messages and then optimize them properly for compelling copy?
Yeah, because I don't think most people have an email problem. They have a positioning problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you solve that, then obviously, and you need a tool. You can't do it manually. So is it Instantly or any other tool on the market? You definitely do need some kind of automation to make this happen on scale.
How usually people notice that they have positioning problem, and what's the next thing which they should take to actually fix the positioning?
Experimenting, instead of like complaining it's not working, you need to kind of adapt. So not panic, just like try different things,
Mm-hmm.
analyze a lot, do your research. It's the collaboration between you and the tool. At the end of the day, you have to listen to the feedback, adjust the messaging, refine your targeting, and treat it as a living system. I
Yeah.
think people who blame the tool actually usually just want shortcuts,
Mm.
and shortcuts really build
That's interesting point
long-term
too.
results, right? So it's a no-brainer. So I think you should start with targeting always. And if you're talking to wrong people, even perfect messaging won't help.
Yeah.
So the messaging has to be clear, human, relevant. Does it respect the reader's time? Are you selling value, or are you just shouting features? All of that, but also the mindset. I think cold email is resilience. At the end of the day,
Mm.
you're gonna get ignored. You're gonna get a lot of no's. And if you treat every response like validation of your existence, you'll burn out. The people who do best see cold email as a data in a way. So that's the way to go.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice point of view. And like, what does like a good performance at the end looks like? How do you measure what success looks like from the campaigns?
I think a good performance in Outbound looks like a predictable movement forward. So not like a viral one-time miracle. It looks like clear reply rates, like high reply rates, steady booking trends, improved relevance over time, compound learning. And what I think it's one of the most important points is like fewer random wins and more repeatable wins, because if you can't replicate something you did successfully, and you can repeat it, and you only had one successful campaign like 6 months ago,
You
that's
will hope
bad.
and pray.
It's still just one campaign. Yeah, you have to build a repeatable process. So yeah, it's about building something stable enough that you can rely on it. And I think the best outbound programs, they don't like spike, they're sustained. It's like that in our job as well as a salesperson. You don't want to have like one great month and then like
Yeah,
all the others like bad. You want to be consistent in whatever like your quota or ARR, monthly MRR, whatever is, on a monthly basis.
yeah.
You just want to, obviously you're going to have some months that are like better, they're like wow,
Mm.
some that are like a bit worse, but there should be some type of like consistency there to actually, to be able to call yourself good, because like one hit miracles, they don't really survive for a long time.
Yeah. Can we just discuss a bit more here the discipline, the relevance, but in the team in general? What
Mhm.
happens when someone from your team actually performs some months best, and there are people in the team who don't have results? How that works in bigger organizations? Are they actually helping each other to find that pattern, or
Yeah, I mean, what company I work for, we are all good. Like my team is probably the best team I was ever, not probably, definitely the best team I was ever part of. And all of them would say the same. I don't know what Jason, our manager or head of sales, is doing when sourcing these people. He's very picky, obviously, as he should be. But all of us are different in terms of like sensibility, what we already discussed, like how we sell, how we communicate, what's our vibe, but we're all good at what we do, and we all learn and absorb from each other. So whenever someone is having like a super successful month in terms of like selling like, for example, last month we had one guy sold, I don't know, most VIPs, like the fully managed services. And then there was one guy who's consistently closing most in software alone without the services. So we kind of like focused on what are they doing differently than us to unlock that potential in, some of the leads maybe we missed or didn't close because we didn't do this or that. So it's all about like exchanging ideas, strategies, tips and tricks. But also, for example, I don't approach sales as like with strategies. For me, it's just like I show up, do my best. I don't strategize about how I'm gonna pitch you. It's all like very spontaneous and very organic. And I think they're doing the same, which is why sometimes when even when I had like some most successful months, when they ask me what did you do differently, I can't
Mm.
pinpoint a thing that I did differently or something that was completely experimental, or I don't even know. So I can tell it to, other people. We need to go back to the calls and like see, was there anything, any detail that I did or said, or, to make most closes that month. So sometimes I always joke about, sometimes some people are not even aware how good they are,
Mm.
because I think it just comes from within. And I don't think sales is like something, a discipline or something you can just sit and like take a book or a notebook and just learn. A lot of it has to do with the personality and the way you just approach people, or approach selling, or approach like who you are. Because
Yeah.
sometimes most time people feel it. So if they feel like they're talking to a real person on the other side of the screen and that you don't care, will they buy or not, which is mostly the
Yeah.
case. We have so many demos and we have so many, luckily, inbounds that we're not shaking before every call. Will this, guy pay at the end? And I think that tracks, because people just need your expertise and they want you
Yeah.
to help them. And when you help them, they will trust you and they will buy. So there's no any hidden agendas there.
Yeah. That's nice. And how long actually people realistically give a campaign before they decide is it worth to continue, or maybe they should change something?
Well, I think longer than most people think. I think you need enough data to judge fairly, and that means several thousands of cents. In our case, we do recommend 25K of emails sent monthly as kind of like proof of concept for people
Just
who
to
are,
have the data.
just starting. Sorry?
Just to have the data, 25K per month.
To no, like that would be like your proof of concept, like
Mm-hmm.
test to actually see the results. Because if you go with a number that's too small, and outbound is a game of numbers, you wouldn't see that much return on investment or traction. So 25K is a number that's not too big, but also not too small for you to see some kind of results. Obviously, there are exceptions, but it depends on your product, on your product market fit, on your offering. There's many things that kind of like affect what results you're gonna end up with. So from what we've seen, like 25K is the number we personally recommend. Also multiple variations tested, like A/B test always, time for warm up and ramp up as well, and time to kind of like iterate based on results. So you always
Yeah.
track what's going on, and then you make tweaks based on like, okay, people preferred this subject line to this. Let's ditch this. Let's use this one. And what similar to this can we now come up with to
Mm.
kind of like test again?
Yeah.
So it takes time. It takes time. There's no like specific number of weeks or days. It really depends what you're selling and who are you selling it to, because some sales cycles are longer than the
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is like what I would say.
And there are some time which are smaller. There is not 25K companies for someone, but yeah, there
That's
should be
25K of emails, not companies. So
emails.
that would be like around, I'd say 10, maybe around 10K of contacts
Yeah.
that you will send multiple steps to.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
call it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's imagine that someone already is running cold emails but is struggling. So where they should look first, just to maybe find what's not working.
Um, I think they should, first of all, I guess education is a problem with most of them. So they don't know where to even start with, because they're not educated about outbound
Mm.
enough. Because if my campaign is not working, I would go look at the stats. I would look at the, are they landing in inbox, first of all? Because if they're not landing, I mean, it's very obvious why people are not booking meetings or replying, because they're not seeing them. Then I would go to check the quality of leads. I would use leads that are always verified, because if you're just using leads and you have high bounce rates because the leads are not good quality, then
Mm.
again, that's, as they would say, à la poubelle, trash. Like you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
really use it. Then obviously the quality of copy matters as well, but I think that what you should prioritize would be the technical things at in the beginning, just because whatever copy you have doesn't
Yeah,
matter
it
if it's
doesn't
not
land in
landing
the
in
email.
inbox. Yeah, so you have to like sort out all of those things first. And if you don't know, you need to educate yourself first. So are you going to hire someone? Are you going to go and watch? I mean, we have super useful YouTube channel, for example, so they can go watch a lot of like master classes, like, tips and tricks. We even have one with Alex Hormozy. So there's a lot of resources out there that will literally help you and tell you everything that I just said, even more than that, probably. So you can do that. Or you can, get on one of the kind of like dedicated services type of plan
Yeah.
where you would actually be working with someone who's an expert on it, and
Mm.
then you will learn firsthand how to, like, for problems not to happen, or for
Yeah. Yeah.
things to like to pretty much be set up for success. Because if you're set up for success, meaning all the technicalities and like all the do's and don'ts are respected, you're halfway there, maybe even more. And then it's just about like tweaking and optimizing to find, to crack that code of what makes your ICP reply and book a meeting.
Yeah. The thing which you said, hire someone dedicated, learn the process, is something which Alex Hormozy is actually mentioning in his book 100 Million Leads. Because if you hire the best and extract his knowledge, you will have his 10 years of experience maybe of something in 2-3 months. And that's the beauty of hiring people who are experts in something. That's really cool. I think you share a lot of useful information here about the outbound. Where should you look if you already started? What are the mistakes? Uh, let's just reflect a bit on the sales, and what has like a sales taught you about yourself as a person.
I think sales reminded me a lot of who I am at my core. It taught me that I'm relentless, that I don't give up easily, and that like persistence can be strength if it's directed well. I think it showed me that I am someone who never compromises on values, integrity, or like how I treat people, no matter how tempting any like shortcuts might look.
Yeah.
And I think it showed me also that loyalty, how deeply loyalty means to me. And that's how I operate. I always stay in the environments that like challenge me, grow me, and like treat me fairly. So if I'm trusted, if I'm supported and surrounded by people who want to build something meaningful, I'm like all in. I don't know how to give less than like 150%. So I think that's the kind of like what there's probably way more learnings I could
Mm.
tell you, but also I think one of them, if we reflect on some that are like kind of bad, maybe would be boundaries, like having boundaries. I think that's super important in sales and in life. But at the beginning of my career, I was like the person who would say like yes to everything, to be kind of like always available, always there when someone needs me. It's kind of like hard. It's
Mm.
hard because you kind of like do too much, and sometimes that's not kind of like the way to do it. And obviously I grew into sales. It's not like I woke up one day and said I'm going to work
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
SaaS sales someday. So I think it takes time to prove yourself and to learn and to always evolve, because even
Mm.
now I feel like there's so much to learn, there's so much to, even looking at other guys from my team, I'm like, I like the way he's doing that, like how do I do it but in my own
Mm.
way. So it's kind of at the end of the day always like makes sense. And going back to my origin, like how I started with all the different jobs and industries I've been a part of, I think I guess PR, it teaches you narrative, right?
Mm.
So you do that, and then like fashion teaches you like creativity, and then diplomacy teaches you like listening and positioning. I think sales is all of that. It's just with a revenue outcome attached. So I think it's kind of like the natural evolution of everything I was already doing, and it took me a while to get there, but I would never go back, honestly. I think I'm right where I need to be, and I think this was the way. I think how they say it's always like um, the universe is guiding you, and there's always a bigger picture that you don't
Yeah.
see. I think there's a quote of Steve Jobs that says like you can't really put the pieces together looking forward just when you're looking backwards.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about my career and everything that happened, because it was not an easy road, and there was different versions of myself through all of it, but it was always the same. I think if you like put all the managers or like directors or owners
Mhm.
for every single company, not in sales, but like from the beginning
Yeah.
of my career, if you put them in the same room, I think the core skill set and the things about me, they were always constant, always the same. But if I go back and think about those different versions of me, the fashion girl, the PR girl, the diplomacy girl, I hold hand with all those versions of myself now, not because they were like bad or problematic or lost or wrong, but because they carried weight. They pushed through uncertainty and never quit, even when things were uncomfortable. And God knows, I've been into a lot of uncomfortable jobs and situations. So I think those versions, like of me, walked. So this version could
Yeah.
stand where I am today, with the company I am with today, which is honestly a dream come true. So yeah, I'm kind of like proud of them.
Yeah, but that's actually, these younger versions of yourself helped you actually shaped who are you today. So you
Correct.
created the identity by your experience in the past. And when we're here, if you can share like one advice to your younger self, like what would you tell her?
I probably start with you're doing amazing, sweetie. Like, the
Or
full Mean
just
Girls
encouraging,
energy.
empowering.
Yeah, but honestly, I thank her. I thank her. Like when I look back, all I can say is thank you, because I know how hard it was, switching from like different industries. And you always, like, when you switch, you always are starting from the ground up and you have to build. And then I built something and I'm like well known or respected or whatever, and then I switch again, so again
Mm,
you have to start from
zero.
zero up. I think it's like that with every company, but it's even more difficult if the companies and are like different industries completely, so you're unknown, you're not comfortable, you're not. But I do also believe that I kind of like that, it's about continuing to move forward, like refine, like
Yeah.
expand, whatever, without ever saying this is enough, I'm done learning. I think it's about celebrating little wins,
Mm,
even the small ones, but not letting them make you complacent. Like staying curious always. I always joke about saying like curiosity never killed this cat ever. So staying humble, staying disciplined,
yeah.
and that's kind of it. I think all versions of me had that. It's just that I was probably lost in some moments and I
Mm,
didn't know what I'll end up doing, because sales was never on the map for me. It was never like something was like, oh, I would like to do sales. I was perfectly happy doing other stuff as well, because I did have multiple talents and I
yeah.
was good at these other things as well. But I'm super happy I ended up right here.
That's great, and I really like the part with with setting up the boundaries, which I think is really important in life. We're coming to the end, so do you have like any maybe thoughts or advices which we didn't cover and you want to share to people in SaaS who are actually doing some with Outbound?
Like advice in terms of like outbound, like cold emailing, or advice regarding growth in general?
Yeah, it could be both. Whatever you want, and whatever you think is something which you want to share.
Well, in general, I would say like growth to me means evolution without losing yourself. So never compromising on who you are and what you stand for. For me, those things were always, like honesty, integrity, transparency, loyalty. So I would never. There's also I'm sure you know Josh Brown. There's a quote of him that I like, really like. He always says, "Sell without selling your soul."
Mm. Yeah.
So that's something I really live by. And when it comes to instantly and to outbound in general, I would say you have to put in work, you have to put in reps, you have to like with anything in life, if you
Yeah.
want it and if you're really serious about it, it's doable. I don't like, you move mountains,
Mm.
like they say, to make something happen if it's meaningful for you,
Yeah.
if you want to do it. If you give up that easy, then it's not that important, or it's not your priority, or like you can, whatever excuse someone gives, like I can poke holes in it. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
part of my sales DNA, but I think you have to put in reps. It's something I call sweat equity. You
Mm.
have to do it. You have to test. You have to maybe even burn some money before seeing some big
Yeah.
results. But in those periods of like burning and like learning and making mistakes, you will figure out. You will
Yeah.
figure out what's the best, what works for you, and then obviously the results will just multiply. But sometimes you have to be in that kind of like uncomfortable phase, and phase that you don't always feel like winning, but I always think of it as it's a preface to you actually winning. So you have to go through both.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, like anything in life, if you don't maybe put a little bit risk, energy, time, and money, you
Yeah.
can't do anything.
Yeah, there's nothing about the risk. Nothing about the risk.
That's great, Mina. So we're wrapping this episode. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think there is a lot of values for people who will watch this, especially with the outbound and the the personal growth as a salesperson, because it's not always about the sales, but there is multiple
Yeah.
experience in the past which can shape you actually become better in sales
Yeah, very
later in life.
untypical example of a salesperson.
Yeah,
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 but I think I always like to think it makes me unique, because in every company, I think in every team, there was no one like me. So
yeah,
it's kind of like endangered species.
yeah. That's great. So this was it of this episode of Leaders of Growth podcast, powered by SmartClick. I'm Milan Savov, and until next time, keep leading, keep scaling, and keep growing. Bye bye.